if you had to be completely honest.
Country conflict and shit. Like, you can say that was the plan, but like if you're in this region.
Wait, hold on, Destiny. The fact that we don't have an Arab state, right? It wasn't the plan, right? They can make an Arab state right now outside of Palestine.
Get along together. That's why it didn't happen. But the plan was.
So then it wasn't ever going to happen. Like,
I'm just saying that, like, why would you agree? Why would you ever agree to split this country in this way when
it feels like a lot of conspiracies? What do you think the Palestinians should do? Like, let's say Hamas has disappeared.
Wait, what conspiracy did I just say?
Well, I wanted to just first touch on Clinton parameters because I feel the need to defend my stance and to concede when new evidence is brought forth.
Okay.
I'm not looking to like twist a narrative, and I feel like it looks like I did with my misunderstanding of that PDF. Okay. I just saw Hebrew on the first page, and I was like, "Oh, this is all of the other side."
Gotcha.
But it's clearly not. So as I read fully through both of the reservations. I see the argument that Israel's reservations are more of just pointing out differences. I didn't read it that way, regardless, like whether they're reservations or not. I read them as reservations. I would agree that the Palestinian reservations are more outside of the parameters that Clinton had set forward. If I'm being completely honest.
Sure.
So that's that. So yeah, I would agree on that the reservations are more outside of the parameters. That's one. And two, the reason I had even brought up Clinton parameters and all this stuff is because of, again, I'm going back to something I told you like 4 times ago of us talking, was this tweet that you had made saying that Arabs had always walked away from peace to like, do terrorism instead. And I felt like that was an unfair summary of the past 30 years. Maybe you'll disagree with that. And what I was trying to get at is, no, Arabs haven't walked away from peace. The Palestinians have, you can say, asked for too much, but I'm always going to go back to me saying that they didn't ask for too much because what they asked for was within what they believed was theirs based off of some Security Council resolutions and some ICJ rulings that I know you've already said you wipe your ass with those things and you don't care. And that's where I feel like we differ mainly. How much weight I give those things opposed to how much weight you give those things. But I feel like the fact of the matter is we both agree on a solution as being 2 states, and we just disagree on how we got to where we are today. And where is the blame mostly on? My argument is it's mostly on Israel, and yours is probably it's mostly on the Palestinians. Is that kind of right?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. Or that, like, right now Israel would settle for a peaceful 2-state solution. I don't think the Palestinians are there right now. Well, I don't know if Israel would settle with Hamas still being there. I think Hamas would have to be removed.
Do you think Israel was interested in a 2-state solution before October 7th, like on October 6th? If you had to be completely honest.
Past 2006, I think the terrain becomes a lot more treacherous for both sides in terms of wanting anything. Past 2006, I think it becomes a lot spicier. I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't think so. I don't think with Hamas, no.
Okay. So before Hamas, would you say that Israel was interested in a 2-state solution?
Yeah, I would say so. It's precarious from like 2001 to 2005. Prior to 2001 for sure, but past 2005, probably no. It's probably not. I don't think there's appetite on either side for it.
Okay. But definitely not before like 93 though, right?
Would Israel have wanted peace before 93?
Before Oslo.
I'm not sure. Maybe. I don't know. I don't think there were any attempts at that point. I think it was all still like just terrorism and shit. I don't know if the Palestinians were trying to negotiate for like 2 states that early on. I don't think so.
Yeah. Okay. So then, from 93 to 2005, or yeah, 2005 is when you feel like Israel was trying to negotiate peace.
From 93 to like 2001 for sure. From 2001 to 2005, maybe there was still a possibility, but like after Hamas, I think it's like.
So what I've conceded in my digging through and talking to you is that I believe that from 2000 to 2001, Israel genuinely wanted two states.
Okay.
Without a shadow of a doubt. Whether or not that two-state was based off of a framework that I believe is fair is different, right? Because you believed yesterday that occupying power should have this say in what, the solution looks like. And my argument was like, that doesn't seem really fair, because if me and you owned a house, right, and you were just stronger than me, right, you'd like put your couch in my room if you want, and like, it doesn't seem fair for you to be the one that decides who splits the house. But then you can argue, well, what are you going to do about it? Right? What are you're going to keep fighting? I'm going to keep beating you up. I guess, yeah, that's my issue with your take, is that you give Israel fully the framework for the negotiations. Like, they get to decide what the split looks like. And I don't think that's necessarily fair. Even America, like Clinton parameters, if you read some of the reservations that Arafat had sent, like the Clinton parameters were based off of Israel's framework, what Israel wanted. Israel didn't want this, Israel didn't want that. Israel wanted to do land swaps, the Palestinians didn't want to do land swaps. Israel wanted all these things. And yeah, I don't know what your thoughts are.
No, I don't think that's realistic. I don't even know if the Palestinians are necessarily owed that. I don't think I would ever say that, like, if you've tried 3 or 4 times to completely destroy the other side and failed, that you're allowed to go back to stage 1 of negotiations. I don't think I would place the onus like that on anybody ever.
Okay, so again, the 4 times to you is 48, 67, and 73, right? Or 3 times. Is there a 4th that you're referring to?
I guess technically some people consider the Suez Crisis the second Arab-Israeli war, but it would be the 3 major wars and then all of the intervening, like, terrorist attack. I say terrorists, whatever you want to call those attacks. So maybe the Fedayeen camps that were sponsored all across the Israeli borders by Egypt, maybe the Black September group, and all the plane hijackings and the foreign attacks and everything, like all of these things. Yeah.
So up until 73. So I would argue to you, and you can tell me if I'm reaching here, those wars were way more understandable than anything that has happened in the past 20 years.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
It's not so for you to paint it in a way like, oh, like, look at these like genocidal maniacs that just wanted to attack Israel just because they're like Jews. I think it's an unfair painting. So when you keep saying,
wait, what's an unfair painting?
When you say Arabs wanted to genocide Israel 3 different times without actually, like, it wasn't like a random event of just random genocidal tendencies.
Okay, wait, hold on. We have to start. Okay, let's do this today. Okay, I think I had about an hour and a half in my brain for this, or maybe 2 hours. I don't know. We'll see. Okay, we need to start writing down statements that we can refer back to so that we can agree, because we keep circling back on like things over and over and over again. Okay, so here's the first statement that I'm going to write down. You give me some too. We can see what we can do. Okay, so the first one that I would, or sorry, what? Okay.
I was just saying, like, just whatever statement you're going to write, like, let's do it from the beginning of this conflict so we don't have to keep going back to it and disagreeing on it, because I feel like that's happened a lot. Like, you'll say something like, oh, pre-48 the Arabs were the 48 war, the Arabs were just, but then you say, well, Arabs, you use that as like Arabs were trying to genocide Israelis in 48.
Okay,
so it's like,
let's say that so the first, number one,
let's keep it consistent.
Sure, let's start in the very beginning. Okay, number one, let's see if we can agree with this. Britain made too many promises for mandatory Palestine. Do you agree with that?
Oh, I love making agreements. Yes, 100%.
Okay, that was the first thing. Number 2 is Zionists had every right to approach the British government and advocate for a space for their people and pursue that in whatever legal manner possible. In mandatory Palestine. Do you agree or disagree with that?
I would agree with everything except for mandatory Palestine.
Okay, why not?
I feel like it's like one people are looking for refuge, and another people have to bear that burden of what happened to them. It doesn't seem. I mean, do you feel like it's fair? I don't know. Like maybe I'm being biased here because I'm Palestinian, but if I were to change,
Can I
these
ask? I want to
terms,
ask sure. I want to ask a slightly different question. Getting at this, okay? Let's hypothesize a world where in 1910, or no, it would have been after the collapse of the Ottoman Empire, the Palestinian Arabs got all of that land. Let's say that in that alternate world, there were still some huge Arab landowners, and the Jews went to them directly, and they tried to buy that land, and they did it, and then they moved in Jewish people that way. Even if Britain wasn't involved, would you say that exchange is unethical, or that's not allowed to happen?
So is Palestine a state at this point, like an official state?
Sure. Let's say it's an official state. Yeah.
Okay, so let's say an official state, and these Jews entering have followed all of the new immigration laws. Then no, of course it's not unethical, right? If I follow the rules of the country and I immigrate to your country, it doesn't matter what race I am. And if somebody in that country is going to sell me land, it's rightfully mine. And if somebody is sitting on that or squatting on that land, I have the right to tell them, hey, this is my land now. So no, I think that would. Does that answer your question?
Okay, so then theoretically, we could have wound up in almost the same place where a ton of Jewish people are buying land inside mandatory Palestine and then moving in. Could that theoretically have happened? Would you feel different about that if it was Arabs that were selling it instead of, well, it was Arabs that were selling it, but if they sold that without it being like a British mandate at the time, would you feel differently about that, or you feel the same about that, or?
Sorry, I don't think I follow.
I'm trying to figure out. So
Arabs were buying it.
Jewish people were buying up large tracts of land, sometimes from foreign owners, sometimes from Arab owners, sometimes from whoever, and then that's what they were
absentee landowners.
Sure, yeah. They were buying land from them and moving in. If that would have happened while Palestine had been ran by a Palestinian government, do you think it would be?
It's an actual state.
Sure, yeah. Do you think it would be okay?
Totally okay.
Okay, so then your contention is just that it was unethical or immoral for Jews to buy land in a place that was like under a mandate?
No, I don't think it's unethical for anybody to buy. It's not the buying of land, right? I believe the idea of Zionism, the purpose of Zionism was to establish a state on that land, not just move to live as in this one Palestine state. It was my mind, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not an expert on Zionism, to establish a Jewish state. And it's kind of like the way I would explain this to you, and maybe tell me if this is an unfair analogy. If let's say it was an African country, white people came in, started buying land with the intention of creating a white state. That's the difference. It's not the fact that they're buying land and moving in, that's fine. It's the idea of wanting to establish a white state on this African country, on this African land.
Okay.
Because I feel like when we keep talking about Jewish and Arab, it's like feels more contentious than it needs to be. But to me, it's more black and white because I see it in a different way. I see it as these people are coming with the intention of building a state for their people on this other land, without, I don't know. That's my view.
Okay, so you think that them buying up places in mandatory Palestine with the intention of creating a state is what makes it unethical?
It's just the intention of creating a state part. That's for with the intention of creating a state for ethnicity, right? They're an ethnic state for them.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that if the Brits allowed this, do you think there's a greater fault on the Zionists or the British for allowing this to happen?
That's a very good question. I think the greater fault is probably on the British. I think given that the British had colonized the land, right? It was a colony, and they're the ones that, like you said at the beginning, that we agreed on, they made too many promises they weren't asking the people living there, hey, we're going to promise this to the French, and we're going to promise this part to us, and we're going to promise this part to the Zionists. They didn't consult the people living there. So yeah, I think it would be mainly on the British.
Okay. So then, recentering on my point, I'm just reading this again. Zionists had every right to approach the British government and advocate for a space for their people and pursue that in whatever legal manner possible in mandatory Palestine. So then, could we say that Zionists did have the right to do this, but maybe morally, maybe Britain should have shot them down? Or
I think Britain should have told them, yeah, you guys do obviously deserve some kind of refuge or a Jewish state. Let's, punish the perpetrators that committed the most atrocious acts against the Jewish people. Germany, let's cut off a swath of Germany and give it to the Jewish state.
wait, you think that would have been more ethical?
I think it would have been, I think both are equally not fair, but one side it's like, okay, one people had absolutely nothing to do with what had happened. Or what was happening throughout Europe. I don't know. I don't think that Jews living in Jerusalem and Palestine at the time, because I know there was a minority living there. I don't know if they were if Zionists, the idea of Zionism emerged because of the treatment of the Jews there, or it emerged because of the treatment of Jews across Europe.
I don't know if that matters as much, because a lot of the Zionist stuff, keep in mind, there was a lot of anti-Semitism around the world, but most of this was done pre-Holocaust, right? So it's not like it was the Holocaust I
hate talking about Zionism because I don't know, I'm not an expert in it. So don't hold me to anything I'm saying about Zionism. This is just...
Sure. I think the big guy that reinvigorated things was the Teddy Herzl dude, the Theodor Herzl guy. And most of his writings and pushings, I think, were in the late 19th century. So a lot of this heavily predates the Holocaust and everything.
Do you okay, let me ask you a question. Do you feel like it would have been more quote unquote, if let's say you were the British, right? You were what would you have done in that scenario? You are the, I don't know, prime minister or king, or I don't know what they do out there of Britain, and this proposal came to you from the Zionists. Would you have said, yeah, sure? Or would you have said, no, not at all? Or would you have said, okay, somewhere else? How would you have approached it?
Hold on, just real quick. Somebody said, Destiny with the zero anti-Semitism in Europe before the Holocaust take again. I've never said that, and that's never been true, and you were permanent for my channel. Good luck. Find a rope. They're big and thick on Amazon. Good luck. I wish I could find more information about this. I've done a few cursory searches. I don't know if Urk has information about this. Wait, hold on. I'm sorry, real quick. Eric says, when a Jewish homeland in Prussia was proposed to Ben-Gurion after World War II by some American general, if I recall, Ben-Gurion said it could only happen at the barrel of a machine gun. So post-World War II, it would have only happened forcefully, but you did have alternative Jewish movements in the Russian Empire and former empire, like Bundism and other autonomisms. Yeah, sure. Although I think the Russian Empire historically was not very friendly to Jews, and they weren't a huge fan of that, right? Paul thanks for the 5 gifted subs. What was the original British? What were the huge reasons why Britain endorsed the Balfour Declaration? Because I've read random smatterings of Jews promised support for World War I or financial stuff and blah blah blah. I'm curious. Do you know the answer to that, or can you give me something to read on that? Because I've tried to look for that and I haven't found anything yet.
I've heard conspiracies. I don't know how true they are, so I don't want to share them to people. But I've heard of things like that Balfour, I forgot his first name, was actually pretty anti-Semitic. And I heard also things of Jews being denied entry to so many countries throughout Europe, including America. And this was a way to okay, you guys can have this land over here far away. I don't know how true that is, but like you, I haven't read deeply into this Balfour guy or who he was or why he was such a proponent of this. I don't know.
Sure. I mean, I know that there was him and that cat. I wish I could. I can't do the names or whatever. The cat. I can't pronounce it. The CHAS, whatever that guy, did a lot of running around and raising money and everything for it. I don't know why Britain accepted both of these. It feels.
Would you have accepted it? Was my question.
Well, but that's why I'm saying I don't know, because I don't know why. Because let's say, for instance, Britain accepted the Balfour Declaration because financial support from Zionists was a really important thing for them in World War I or World War II. Then I'd be oh, okay, sure, I understand. I guess if your back's against the wall and you need to accept it, then sure. But if there is no good reason at all, or I don't see a good reason for it, you're just oh, I want to be nice to the Jews. Well, it's why the fuck would you? This just seems like you're setting yourself up for disaster by overpromising here. So I'm imagining there must have been a rationale, or maybe they just thought the Jews would fail. Maybe they're oh, we're gonna create this little Jewish colony. It's gonna have 40,000 people, and then you guys can just chill in Haifa or whatever, and build a port and have a mini colony there in a sea of Arab states or some shit. Maybe that's what they thought would happen. I'm actually not sure on that. I'd be really curious to read more or get more information about why Britain was finally made that endorsement. and like what the driving motivating factors were. Yeah.
So if there was no financial reason, would you like if the Zionist party wasn't, I guess, funding the British government, would you then not support the decision to do this? Like, what would be a scenario where you would say, okay, no, this is a bad idea?
Well, I mean, retrospectively, it seems like a bad idea, but I just don't know what the rationale was at the time, so it's hard for me to say.
Okay, forget retrospectively. Let's like if there was a scenario like this today, can you imagine accepting something like this?
Yeah, if like the existence of my country or like a war effort or some huge piece of public opinion was like massively pushing in favor of it, well, yeah, I imagine you'd have to maintain your power, right, as a democratic leader, right?
Yeah. Did I answer your questions though about?
Yeah, I think so.
If I would do it differently.
So, yeah. So we do agree, though, Zionists had every right to approach the British government and advocate for space for their people and pursue that in whatever legal manner possible. But maybe we can say, like, Britain should have said no, right?
Yeah. I mean, how can you say that they don't have the right to try to establish a country? I feel like that's weird to say.
Okay. Okay. So, assuming these 2 points, this is almost like syllogistic, but you can tell me what you're saying. So then
make sure we agree that, like, make sure my point is, like, I disagree with the in mandatory Palestine part, because I don't want us to go back to this note doc or notepad later and say, oh, Axe, you agree that mandatory Palestine, like they had a right to go there. I don't agree with that. I just agree they had a right to go and establish a country or a nation or a safe space. I don't think it was fair for it to be.
Well, what would have been a possible place where it would have been fair if not here?
Going back to your point, I don't know the context of why this was even required.
My guess is going to be, and I could be wrong, but my guess for why this was a convenient thing is because there were no states after the collapse of the Ottoman Empire. So basically, almost the entirety of the Ottoman Empire, same for like heavily autonomous regions like the Khedivate of Egypt, that basically the entire Ottoman Empire is kind of like up for grabs in terms of like where can we put people or do things. I don't know if there was a similar place anywhere in the world that hadn't already been basically claimed as like states or colonies or whatever.
I believe Britain had more colonies than just through the Middle East at that point.
Where they could have like shipped in Jews and everything, or?
Yeah, wasn't Uganda like an option for a while? Was it Uganda? I thought there was like another country that was.
I know that they quote unquote considered a lot of places, but I don't know what the real considerations were, or what people were there, or if there would have already. Because I think another benefit to the Palestine region was a lot of it was kind of like empty, and there were like spaces for people to like move in and not. I don't know if that was the true for Uganda and everything. I don't know. Also, there were no Jews in Uganda at all either, but. We can look at like different places that were considered. I don't know why they were turned down or not. Maybe there were good reasons, maybe there were bad reasons, but
yeah. Do you feel like Britain kind of just pushed this pushed this off to whether it was going to be Uganda, Palestine, whatever? They kind of pushed the problem to someone else that didn't really have anything to do with it.
What do you mean didn't have anything to do with it?
As in like, well, we have to agree on why do you think the Zionist movement started? Like, why did they want to establish a country in the first place? Is it religious? Because if it's religious reasons, then, like, I'm not gonna agree with that, like, reasoning.
Are you asking me if I think that like it was religious reasons that primarily drove the location of Palestine?
No, I guess I'm asking. The reason for the want of a state, a Jewish state, was it because of religious reasons, or was it because of?
Oh, I think it was largely secular reasons. I believe. I think most of the Zionism, I could just look up Theodor Herzl. I believe was I can't spell Theodore. Fuck me.
Yeah, I would want to know what the reasons were, because if the reason was.
Well, this is pretty bad. I'm pretty sure most of the big, like, 1800s, like, Zionist stuff was relatively secular. Like, it wasn't all just, like, religious shit. They just wanted a place where they wouldn't get killed or whatever by people, basically.
Yeah, no, I agree. So if that was the reason, because they want a place that they're not getting killed, then I'm curious, who did they feel like they were getting killed by, and where was the most, like, what was the most, was it the entire world, or was it specified, like, okay,
I think it was kind of the entire
Europe.
world. I think anti-Zionism or anti-Semitism had been a thing for like the entirety of the of the Jewish people. I think that was part of the
So you don't see more or less a more or less case to establish a Jewish state in Germany as opposed to Palestine? To you, it's like equal. Equal fairness or equal unfairness, I would say.
I would say, like, if we're looking for places to put new people and make a new state, Germany's probably a harder sell because these borders are so much more established, and it's not like you have, like, well, actually, I guess I'm curious. Did post-World War II Germany go back to the same borders, more or less, as pre-World War II Germany? Or were there, like, massive parts of Germany cut off? Well, I guess you had, like, West Germany and East Germany, actually. But, I mean, like, from West Germany and East Germany, were there, like, parts that were cut off and given to other countries and stuff? I know that I think they lost like some colonies or something, or
yeah. Okay, so then you don't see a difference between them establishing a moral difference in establishing a Jewish state in Palestine versus Germany. Based off
I see the difference. I see. No, I don't think it's. I don't think you earn it by the atrocities. And the Balfour Declaration was prior to the Holocaust and anything, anyway. East Germany was given to Poland. Prussia was given to Poland. Okay, I would have to go and check, like, for territorial changes and shit. But the reason, my guess is, at the time, is that, like, the collapse of the Ottoman Empire is just seen as attractive because there's a lot of kind of, like, stateless people now, and there's, like, a whole swath of territory that's kind of, like, scattered in terms of, like, people inhabiting it. So it's just, like, the easiest place. Like, maybe we can sneak a new country in here, basically.
Maybe. Okay. Yeah. I guess I'm in my own, like, having trouble consolidating Jewish, like, the Jews serve a state, and where would that state be that's, like, morally justified, right? Unless it was, like, a piece of land that was completely uninhabited, which I don't know if there was something like that in Europe. Or
I don't know if there's anything like that in the whole world, basically, unless you go to, like, the Arctic or something, right?
Maybe, like, somewhere in Russia. I don't know. Yeah, so I don't know. I can't say that they had. I wouldn't accept that Britain had the right to, not the right, but yeah, whatever. I don't agree that they should have been given an opportunity to establish a Jewish state in mandatory Palestine. I don't agree with that.
Where do you think they should have gone instead?
So I think, okay, here's what I think. I think a large portion of them should have been able to immigrate to Palestine and be a part of a Palestinian country one day, right?
Do you think that Palestinians would have been okay with that?
I don't know, because I think it was Benny Morris that said that the chief motive behind the resistance of the Arabs was the idea of establishing a Jewish state.
Well, yeah, so, but, like, let's say there was an Arab state with 200,000 people and 500,000 Jews wanted to immigrate there. They would obviously deny that on ethnic grounds, right?
I think you would. Yeah. I would agree with that. I think you would have to spread it out more.
Well, it wouldn't be. There's nothing about spreading out. It would be Syria. They would want to maintain the ethnic majority. They would not want to be an ethnic minority in their country, right? If there was
which in itself is, like, really hard to, like, my brain tells, like, a part of my brain tells me, like, you know, like, having an ethno state or establishment of an ethno state just seems bad. But I can see if there's ever a reason for it, this would probably be one.
Sure.
So it's hard for me to think that way of, like, we want to establish a state for this specific ethnicity.
Sure. I think ethnic states sound bad to us, probably because in the vast majority of the world, I don't think you ever have to even really think about it, because most states have ethnic majorities and those never change anyway, I think, for the most part. Like, it's not like Japan has, like, you know, 500 million Chinese people that want to go immigrate to it, or yeah, I just don't think typically it happens that so many people are migrating to an area that it's going to, like, dramatically change your ethnic composition, like, especially people that have historically been fighting them, right?
Yeah, I don't know much about, like, Jewish ethnicity versus religion. I don't know how the two, like, merge. Not educated in that. It's weird to tell me that, you know, the Jews in Yemen, the same ethnicity of the Jews in Russia.
Well, they might not be. I mean, they all descend from different peoples. Or there are a few that descend from different peoples. I don't know if they're the same. Like, there's, like, I think somebody emailed me once. I wish I had this email. I must have fucking deleted it, which was stupid. But there's, like, apparently there's, like, 5 major different Jewish ethnic groups or whatever. Mizrahi, whatever bullshit, Ashkenazi bullshit, and there's, like, 3 others. But I don't know the names of all of them. The Jew war, yeah.
Do you believe that the just cause in establishing a Jewish state overwrites the tragedy of displacing another people? It's maybe kind of a very vague question.
I mean, I don't think that people should ever be expelled. I don't think that's good.
But if you want to establish an ethnically majority country and do that, you're going to have to move some people out, right?
Yeah, maybe. I guess it depends on.
Small...
I think it depends on how that moving is done. I think there are questions around that. So, like, a lot of people consider like the major land purchases that Zionists did to be unethical. I don't know if that's unethical. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's to me, it's about the intent. Like, if I'm buying homes in the neighborhood to make sure that no one can live in that neighborhood, and I can establish so yeah, I think intent is very important. Like, if I'm moving into the neighborhood to live amongst the people that are living here and just come in peace and just want to live a peaceful life, then that's different. I think the intention is very important.
Maybe. Hold on real quick. This guy's losing his fucking mind. I'm dragging David in here for a minute. Jesus Christ. Okay. What?
Losing his fucking mind. Dragging David.
Testing?
Hi.
Okay. Yeah, so wait, why don't I see Axel? No, he isn't here. All of the ethnic groups between Jews are extremely genetically related, except for Ethiopian Jews. So it would be kind of weird to say that, like, I don't see how they're related.
I believe you. I believe you. I just didn't know. I have no idea. I'm not well informed on this. So you completely.
Also,
if that's the case, then yeah, makes sense.
Wow, thank you, David, for that huge contribution. Thank you.
That's not the only thing. Hold on.
Okay.
I'm just trying to fix the audio.
Is this your Thresh Destiny?
You guys keep chatting while I figure this out.
Okay. Okay.
So we kind of don't agree on the second point. We agree on the first point.
Well, wait, hold on, wait. Which part? Let me restate the second point. You tell me which part you disagree with. Zionists had every right to approach the British government and advocate for a space for their people and pursue that in whatever legal manner possible in mandatory Palestine.
Yeah, period. No, period after possible. I agree. But I don't have the solution.
Wait, so if not in mandatory, if impossible, if I delete the mandatory Palestine, isn't that still implied? That they can approach the British government and say, where should we do it? And they're like, okay, well, in mandatory Palestine. They're like, okay.
No, I think they have the right to attempt to try to establish a country. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's right to do that, though.
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying they have the right to try. It's
to petition a government and see if they'll let them, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think, anyone has the right to do that.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Okay.
I figured it out. I have a question for both of you. What right do the Jews not have to move into Palestine? What kind of moral authority does a group have to stop them from going there without having any sort of sovereignty whatsoever? What gives them that right to say you guys are not allowed to come here and you guys are not allowed to make a state?
I think it's less about Jews specifically. It's more about anybody in that, personally, I think if a bunch of Russians were going into Palestine to establish a state, the same result would have happened. I don't think it's about Jews in this scenario.
What if a bunch of Arabs from a different country started moving in? Do you think that they would make a big movement to try to fight them, that it should only be the Palestinians?
No. I don't think so, because it depends which Arabs.
Egyptians, Jordanians, Saudi Arabians, any of them. If any of them, a bunch of them moved in.
No, I don't think the Arabs would have fought back, because the idea that the British had promised the Arabs was if they were to revolt against the Turks, they were able to establish this one big Arab state. I think a lot of the Arabs...
The only problem they had is it would fuck with their big, huge Arabic empire. They didn't want to really even create a Palestinian state whatsoever. They just didn't want the Jews taking up too much space in their big Arabic empire.
I feel like it's kind of a weird take. If let's say 500,000 Russians immigrated to Florida, I'm sure there's going to be some resistance to that, versus if people from California moved to Florida.
You're talking about sovereign states. Let's say that it was still under British. It was still a British colony.
No, I
And then a
understand, but
bunch
we're
of
talking about a time where sovereign states weren't really like, it's like that was a fairly novel idea still. Like, I mean, especially in the Arab world, right? There wasn't really sovereign states up until what, World War II. So you can't use the sovereign state argument because people, it's still their.
well, there
home,
was
it's
sovereign
still
states,
their
just not in
land.
that region because that entire region was just colonial states. Like there was not a single drop of sovereignty, except for a few areas in the Middle East. But these were literally just colonial states for the past 2,000 years since the last sovereign state of Israel.
I can't hear, but can I
Oh,
interrupt?
okay, hold on,
So
wait.
what-
Ligon's got input.
So just real quick, I think the question is, and I can't hear you guys, so sorry. The question isn't about whether or not they wanted to establish a giant Arab state. It's, I think now, looking back, how would the people of Palestine that were inhabiting it and their descendants, what would their lives be like if Arabs had taken over? Do you think those Palestinians would have been evicted, gone, or do you think their lives would be in much better places than they are now? The end.
First of all, one thing that's super important is I don't think anyone knows this. What percent of the land that was purchased had like anyone living in it?
My understanding is the majority of the land, I believe, was uninhabited. I believe, like over 50%. I don't know.
80% of the land would be completely uninhabited purchases, and the other 20% was the land that was purchased where the at the absolute worst they were evicting tenant farmers, and this would be like a moral outrage because there's like tenant rights that didn't exist at the time, so it would probably be like a moral wrong. That like the 20% of land, you could say that there's like some moral wrong, but the 80% was.
I don't understand. Are you saying that Arabs or Palestinians only lived on 20% of the land?
No, that
was
of the
rightfully
80%
theirs?
of all the land that the Jews purchased, 80% of it had literally no one living there. It was just completely either swamps that they deforested and like drained the swamps with their Jew magic and then lived there, or purchased land.
No,
that
I don't
was, like,
disagree. I don't disagree with
Yeah.
that. I think they didn't purchase. I thought you meant like they purchased like 80% of the land in Palestine. No, you're talking
Oh,
about
no.
of the land they purchased. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't disagree with that unless there was evidence to point to the contrary. I thought that the total land they purchased made up like 7 or 8% of mandatory Palestine.
But back to the most important question is, what right do they have to prevent the Jews from buying up the land? Because usually that's something we think of from a sovereign state. They have a right to stop you from coming to that country because they have rules and regulations and all sorts of other things. Like, I don't want
I think
to
the right
immigrate
comes
here.
from the right comes from the intent. You're trying to paint this picture, right? If a bunch of Arabs moved to some place in Europe that wasn't sovereign, like the Austro-Hungarian Empire when it got broken up before all those countries formed, and they were like, okay, let's just buy up a land, and our intention is to create this Arab state, I'm sure there would have been resistance. It's about, to me, it's not that that there was Jews moving there and buying land.
No. If
That's
wait,
not-
if the Arabs started buying up land, there would be resistance. That if they try to like buy up 80% of the land from Saudi
again,
Arabia,
the intent with the intent
of
build
creating a big
country.
country, yeah. And like even this is worse, a country that like completely sucks them in and makes them just like a non-sovereign state and makes them just a piece of the like colonial state. This would just be another like Arab colonial state.
If your question is, should Arabs in the region have gotten upset, or what right did they have to say they don't want Jewish immigration? That's the question. Or Jews to buy land here? My argument to that, or my reason would be that they didn't want the establishment of a Jewish state on land that they lived on for a very long time. That's my opinion. I don't think it's about them being Jews. They just didn't want. But,
It wouldn't be on the land that they were on. It would be like on the surrounding lands that they besides like the
wait. From my understanding, they expected all of historic Palestine as a part of the Balfour Declaration.
Yeah, but they were willing to negotiate. Unlike the other side, they were willing to settle for.
Can you show me those negotiations? Are you talking about the Peel Commission? Because in the Peel Commission, the Jews did say the Zionist Congress.
He's talking about the partition plan of 47.
Ben-Gurion's statements. I'm talking about 47, and I'm talking about like Ben-Gurion's statements that he's willing to, like even way before 47,
let's forget
negotiate with the
while.
Palestinians.
Forget the statements for a while. Let's talk about the act. If you want to talk about the actual attempts at partition, we can agree or disagree. I think Peel Commission, that partition that came out of that, both sides disagreed. And the reason why the Zionist side disagreed was because they didn't agree on the border, and a lot of the people in the Zionist Congress at the time believed that they deserved all of historic Palestine. Okay? And in the Peel Commission, hold on. In the Peel Commission, also in the partition, if you actually read through that report, it says, and Destiny, please force me to pull this out so I don't get another Reddit thread against me. They asked for approximately 225,000 Arabs to move out of the newly formed Jewish state into an Arab state, where about 1,200 Jews would have to move out of the newly formed Arab state. Obviously, the Palestinians and Arabs are going to reject that deal. Now, if you want to go to the 47 partition plan, you have to remember.
Okay, wait, hold on. Can I intervene here? Let me recenter this argument. Okay, hold on, David. Your argument is fucking retarded. Okay, the Palestinian people were not looking to have. The goal wasn't to sit a Palestinian resident on every single square inch of the entire geographic area of Palestine. And the idea that they can buy land as long as nobody's on there doesn't make any sense. After the mandatory period expired, they wanted that entire state to be theirs. So even if you're buying up huge swaths of land where there aren't people there and they're making a state there, it's not like that feels good to anybody, right? That's obviously the point. It's not like, oh, why do you care? Nobody's there. That'd be like
no, not why do you care, but what right do they have to prevent them?
The right that they felt like they had was the right of it.
What right do they feel like? What kind of actual right do they have compared to anything else we would see in history?
Well, compared to anything else we see in history, I mean, you can do Chapter 1, Article 1 of the self-determination from the UN Charter, although that's going to be from 41 afterwards, or 45 afterwards. I don't remember. But the right that they're looking for is basically the agreement they made with the Brits, saying, "Hey, we're going to have these mandatory places that you're going to give to us afterwards." Right? That's the right they're looking for, that they feel like they had, was the promise that the Brits made them.
And weren't those agreements prior to the Balfour Declaration? Like a year before?
I don't remember if they were prior to or not, but it seems like Britain basically promised the same tract of land, or a huge overlapping parts of it, to two different people, which is why both sides feel fucked.
Mm-hmm. But I still don't see what right the Palestinians had
the same right that
to create a state, more than the Jewish side that already lived there.
Okay, the same right that the Palestinians had to not want a Jewish state was the same right that the Jews felt like they had to establish a Jewish state, right? The difference is, these are both promises from the British, but the difference is one peoples were living there. That's the difference.
Okay, the difference was that one people were living there. Okay, so then the one people that are living there, they have right to tell the other people that they can't legally purchase land from there. And then once the people are legally purchasing land and own up about, and there's a shit ton of people there that want a state, and even the Jews that were originally there didn't feel comfortable and also wanted to create a state to protect themselves, they didn't have the right to do so.
I've never in my life heard that the Jews that were living in Palestine, the 10,000 or so, wanted to form their own state. But
you don't think that the 10,000 Palestinian Jews wanted to form a state?
I mean, not avowed. Everybody would. I mean, if you could, everybody would want to have their own state. But no, I don't think that was a big thing of the people there at the time. No, I've never heard that before. If that was the case.
From what I know, that is very much the case, and they were extremely important in the some of the migration and helping establish the beginning parts of the Yishuv and whatnot.
Nah, no shot. Extremely important. There were 10,000 there, right? There weren't that many. I think the more important thing was probably the overseas money and all of
there.
Yeah.
I'm saying those who already were there were able to help establish the beginning steps of migration and whatnot.
No, I don't think so. No. I think the beginning steps of migration, everything, were all foreign Zionists. The people there were fucking broke losers. No offense. But I don't think the people there were that important at all. That's my understanding, at least. I could be wrong or something, but no, I don't think. I think it was the foreign people that were raising all the money up, and the European Jews, and the Russian, and I don't know how much the U.S. ones were involved. I don't hear much about them, but British are the ones that I hear mainly. Those are the guys that were coordinating, and then all of the. I wish I could remember the names. There were two huge organizations that Jews made for buying land and appropriating it to Jews as well. And then all the ones that migrated down there to head the Yishuv and do all the military coordination, everything. Yeah, I don't think the Jews there on the ground. I don't know if there's a Zionist. I'm sorry. I don't mean that. It's a talking point of oh no, it was the Jews there that set everything up. Blah blah blah. Nah, no shot. It was European Jews, right?
I mean, regardless whether or not that was the case, I think it's irrelevant, because my question is, why did the Zionists have what right did the Zionists have to establish a Jewish state on this land? And the only right you could point to is the Balfour Declaration, which again, a promise from the Brits that also the Arabs received a promise from the Brits, right? So
I just don't buy the argument that living there is enough to prevent other people from living there without like some sort of sovereign entity where you have
no,
where
it's
you
not
create
preventing
rules.
them from
Like
living
let's
there.
say, hold on, let's say like if we were talking about like the United States of America and the British never lost control of that place and it was just a colonial state, and a bunch of Native Americans decided that they wanted to purchase all of Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota. They legally purchased it. The people were willing to give up their areas. And then even like they were moving it to places that had no one inhabiting those areas. And then they wanted to create their own state there. The Native Americans.
The Native Americans wanted to create their own state there?
Yep. Let's say they were expelled. They haven't lived there in 500 years. They've been expelled. They're living in Mexico, in Poland. They're in like spread across the entire world. They say, "Fuck this shit. We want to purchase land. There is no state here. They're about to collapse the state. Let me purchase up as much land as I can, and we're going to create a state back where we were."
Okay, so the back where we
What
were
stops them
argument
from
is an argument that means absolutely nothing to anybody who's not Jewish. I'm sorry, like that's just the reality. Like 2,000 years ago, having a kingdom in the land is not a good enough reason to come and establish a Jewish state on a land it's like enough time has
I didn't
passed.
say
Like, we
just
don't even
establish. I
know-
didn't say just come in there and say we establish a state. I'm saying legally purchase the land, and then say we would like to create a state.
There's
back
no
in that.
issue with legally purchasing the land. Again, it's about the intent. If the natives said we want to establish a state in half of the U.S., then
Yeah, and they purchased
then it
enough
becomes a
land
problem.
to make them own half of it.
No, they didn't. They actually didn't, because the Peel Commission wanted to move 225,000 Arabs out of what would be a Jewish state, which actually at the time was only 14% of the land. So they were giving 14%
Yeah, and the
of the
Jews
land.
didn't even
That's it.
accept that one. The UN partition didn't require the like throwing people out. So that's like not the argument that the Jews said if we don't throw the Arabs out, then our state won't be good. They were more than willing to live with Arabs in their state. And if the Arabs didn't want to be in their state, they were more than willing to allow them to leave or stay. So I don't know what this argument is.
Do you not hear how like silly that sounds? Like they were willing to let them live, stay or leave. Like that sounds super silly. And you wonder why there would be resistance against a state that's trying to establish like that. Like, yeah, hey, we're going to establish a state in historic Palestine. You guys are free to stay, but you can leave too. Of course, there's going to be resistance. Obviously. Like, you can't say that in good faith that there's not going to be resistance. Any two peoples in the world
try.
would have a conflict. Okay, and that's where we are today, right?
Yeah.
Now we're in 2023.
Good job.
And there's an apartheid regime and an occupation that hasn't ended, and constant fear on both sides, and yeah, doesn't seem like it was a successful project, if you ask me.
Well, should have accepted UN 47. The UN petition 47 probably would have been a little bit easier on
I
everyone.
don't think anybody.
Do you think that?
anybody
Hold on,
agrees
stop. Hold
with
on.
that.
Do you think you could reasonably accept? If you were an Arab, would you have accepted the UN partition plan in 47?
Of course he wouldn't have. It's just like.
Yeah,
Wait, I'm asking David.
No one.
I don't know.
would.
You don't have to answer for him. He can answer. Would you have accepted it, David?
absolutely.
Why?
I just made 100 different independent states. I just had a bunch of people start moving into the Palestinian region, and then after getting 98%, like owning 98% of the Middle East, and we're going to make like a big unified Arabic country, and then 2% of the land is going to be in dispute. But instead,
Wait, where does
I'm gonna
2% of the land come
all out
from?
war.
Are you saying of the entirety of
Out of
all
like the whole whatever like big caliphate that was like being planned at the time to create a huge
Okay, but
unified
this caliphate wasn't being planned at the time. There wasn't like there were kind of like I think there were pan-Arab like aspirations, but it's not like anybody was like actually enacting
that's what they were
those.
thinking was going to happen. They thought there was going to be a big unification.
I mean,
That was the plans during that time.
You can say that was the plans, but I'm pretty sure even prior to the mandates, you've got like competing royal families, you've got like other sorts of like country conflict and shit. Like, you can say that was the plan, but like, if you're in this region,
wait, hold on, Destiny. The fact that we don't have an Arab state, right? It wasn't the plan, right? They can make an Arab state right now outside of Palestine.
Get along together. That's why it didn't happen. But the plan was
so that
to
it
do
wasn't
that.
ever going to happen. Like,
I'm just saying that, like, why would you agree? Why would you ever agree to split this country in this way when Iraq got their full country? They didn't have to split with anybody. Syria got their full country, as crazy as their borders are. They didn't have to split with anybody. Jordan got their shit. They didn't have to split with anybody. Egypt, I don't even know if Egypt was part of a mandatory anything. Why would you, if you were then the Arabs living in Palestine, you're like, why the f am I divvying this up 50-50 with European settlers?
Because you already seen the Civil War. That didn't go well. This is already.
Yeah, but that Civil War, that was just a civil. Well, let's say 47. That was just a civil war, though. But like post Civil War, you got all these other Arab states around you. You could probably fight and knock these guys out of here, right? So why would you give up here? Why would you agree to a UN plan where you could probably just like go to war with these people and kick them out?
If you thought for sure you were going to win, I guess I wouldn't accept it. I would just. Try
there you go. Yeah, of course. Yeah, you're going to fight for it, of course, right? Obviously, if you know you're going to lose from now for the next 75 years, you probably would accept the 47 plan, not looking forward. But at that particular point in time, right, you want to...
I'm being a little bit too retrospective, yeah.
Sure, yeah. So I think at that time, the idea like, well, they should have accepted 47. I mean, like, obviously they wouldn't have at that time. Nobody, I don't think anybody would have in that position, right?
Okay. Fixed.
Anything else you want to go over while you're here with this guy?
The justification, or not the justification, but the use for the end goal of the war, and how like basically everything is absolute status quo until like you kept saying that like, oh, it's a horrible idea to try to get rid of all of Hamas and it's never going to end up happening, and then like the end goal isn't to kill every single person. No, I'm talking about Destiny, my bad.
Yeah, I don't think that you can fully go in and get rid of all of Hamas without like 100,000 plus.
You don't have to get rid of every single person in Hamas. Eventually, you get rid of like 80% of the militants and you completely destroy all their infrastructure. Like they just started flooding the all the tunnels, and like it's going fast. The southern incursion or whatever it's called. I think that the only thing that Israel needs to do is completely topple the way that Hamas is able to govern. They're going to end up having to do an occupation without for a short period of time from Israel, and then transfer into copium is like something like a Saudi Arabia UAE coalition, which is in some sort of talks but not likely. Or you would have to eventually have to transfer that into control to the PA, and like that is pretty much the military strategy. And I don't see how you not going all the way through and just like fucking like mowing the grass one more time is going to do anything for Israel whatsoever.
Okay.
Do you disagree?
I don't know. I think it all comes down at the end of the day to civilian casualties. I don't think that like people are already uncomfortable. I don't think you're going to get past like 40,000 civilian casualties without the whole world balking. And I think it's going to stop. Like, let's say theoretically, before the operation's finished, the casualties are climbing north of like 60, 70,000. Do you think Israel would continue? Do you think it'd be worth it for them?
They would. I think so.
Okay.
But I don't think it's going to get to that point. I think it'll probably get to around... My prediction is 30,000-40,000 by complete end. They seem to have the casualties have seemed to kind of slow down ever since the ground incursions, surprisingly. And I think that I think Lonerbox is going over like the proportionality and like what the ISIS war was there was like an accepted like the ratio between the militants versus civilians, and it seemed that Israel was doing a little bit worse than the ISIS civilian militant casualty ratio, but not much worse.
Okay. Anything else? Does Axel want to respond, or are you good? Or
I mean, in terms of like the proportionality question. I know we haven't talked about Gaza at all recently. It's
it a
more
genocide?
complicated. It's more complicated than just comparing it to what happened in Rafah in Iraq, because again, once like we have to talk about the blockade. Like we just have to. And look, there's absolutely zero justification for killing a civilian. Like that's why I've avoided this topic, because I don't want my words to be misconstrued in any way. I just feel like these things happening have an underlying root cause, and until the root cause is addressed, things will continue to happen. So even if Hamas got wiped out, I think a new group is going to take their place, and it's going to be perpetual until the root cause is solved. I don't think that's a controversial statement.
That is pretty. So you're saying that the blockade is unjustifiable? You said.
I don't think it's not just the blockade. I think everything going on, because Palestinians and the way the people in Gaza have been reacting and the way the people in the West Bank have been reacting see themselves as this single entity. So when Hamas blames Israel for things that they're doing in Jerusalem or the settlements or whatever, and they start firing rockets, and this is just, this is the Palestinian perspective. In the Israeli perspective, it's like, well, they're just firing rockets for no reason. What's going on? But the Palestinian perspective is like, well, you guys keep building more and more of these illegal settlements and making a country for us impossible. So it's like you can't separate Gaza and the West Bank, as a lot of people have tried to do. I think it's a single entity under, Palestinian quote unquote state, as recognized by 140 countries now. So when Hamas does something in response to what they say, again, this is not my words or my opinion, but their opinion is, look what's happening in the West Bank. They, demolish these 100 homes. Just an example. In response, we're going to fire rockets at Israel because no one else is doing anything about it. Now, is that a just reason? Probably not. They're not going to be able to justify firing rockets at civilians. But again, the two see themselves as the same. So when we say that Palestine is being occupied, it's not just talking about Gaza. We're talking about the West Bank as well.
I have no clue what that had to do with the blockade, though. You said that was unjustifiable because Israel does settlements, so Hamas has to shoot rockets, and that if Hamas wasn't there, there'd be no rockets.
I'm telling you what I think the perspective of the people that are justifying things that Hamas does is saying, well, no one, Israel continually, and this has nothing to do with Gaza at this point, they continually build settlements in what is supposed to be a Palestinian state, and no one is stopping them. They continually demolish homes. They continue to subjugate the people there. So Hamas is going to respond saying, trying to show Palestinians, look, diplomacy doesn't work with Israel. Violence is the only way, and that's how they get support through those.
How's that worked out for them?
I mean, I think more people are talking about this issue than ever before in the last 20 years. So in their minds, it's probably working. Unfortunately, no one's been talking about it. I don't think you've been thinking about this issue in October 6th, October 5th, October 4th. That's the sad reality.
How do you think the Palestinians are going to think it worked out when the entire Gaza Strip is completely devastated and then Hamas is completely destroyed? Do you think they're going to be like, wow, it was a really great idea every time we shot rockets and did October 7th. Let's try it again.
Unless
I think the one problem is there actually just hasn't been a complete destruction of a Palestinian militant force. I think this is exactly what's needed to get rid of that stupid idea that the more violence equal, the more good things will happen to me. They got that idea from Lebanon, unfortunately, but that idea is going to go away nice and quick once Hamas is completely rooted out from every single tunnel.
Yeah, it feels like a lot of conspiracies. What do you think the Palestinians should do? Let's say Hamas has disappeared.
Wait, what conspiracy did I just say? Hold on.
Let's say we can snap our fingers. Well, I mean, your conspiracy that they're just going to stop trying to do militant activities when they destroy Hamas. I think that's delusion. If you want me to be honest,
they're not going to not do it because they're so much better.
No, but
they're literally not going to be.
you said they're gonna destroy Hamas, and no other militant group in the Palestinian militant group is gonna try this again, which I
No,
think
they'll
is
probably have a
so-
better idea that it's not a good idea to try it. I didn't say that they'll never try again. What I'm saying is, first of all, it'll be a good lesson that it's an awful idea. Second, when there is an actual like non-Israeli like governing force that's not the PA, which is awful. If it's something like copium would be something like Saudi Arabia or the UAE that would do an occupation after Israel defeats Hamas. That could allow stabilization, and surely the Palestinians will become a peaceful people after that. Copium, but that's basically the best you can hope for. You know for a fact that the status quo is absolutely guaranteed while Hamas is in power. Israel would never in a million years negotiate with the Hamas with their ideology. It's just an awful idea.
Look, you can hope for all of these things. That's fine and dandy. I'm telling you, like as it is. Like this is what's going to happen, and as long as there's a people living under occupation, they are going to violently resist. Like we can both dislike that. That's going to happen.
I have a question for you. What do you think would motivate them more to violently resist? If Israel didn't destroy Hamas, or if Israel did destroy Hamas?
What would make the Palestinians want to resist? Oh, sorry. Explain. I don't understand.
Oh, also, do you think that UN 242 is going to get more votes this year, and then that's going to finally end the occupation?
What?
If we could just get one more country?
Why?
Why what?
I mean, I feel like 242 has consistently gotten a vast majority of votes, except for basically Israel and the U.S. And I think the longer the occupation goes on, the more pressure that's going to be put on the U.S. and Israel to solve this thing. That's what I think.
And then Israel's going to have enough pressure where they say, you know what, guys, we're going to take down our borders. Come get us.
I don't know. You tell me. Is Benjamin Netanyahu, is he having a great time right now? Do you think the Israelis see him as a favorable person right now? He's the one that's been talking about.
He's not going to get replaced with someone that says, let's drop our borders and let another October 7th happen. He's just going to get replaced by someone slightly more moderate. And it's not because they don't like the idea.
What borders are you talking about? Israel doesn't have borders.
You're like,
what borders are you talking
how
about?
is Bibi Netanyahu doing now? Like,
Wait, tell me, what borders are you talking about? Does Israel have borders?
Yeah, they have.
Can you draw it on a map? Can you draw it real fast for us? Let's see what the borders of Israel looks like.
The annexed borders? Yeah, I could. It would include include the Golan Heights. It would include the all of Israel proper. It would include East Jerusalem because that's been annexed. That would be part of the borders. It would include everything but the Gaza Strip because they pulled out and they never annexed the Gaza Strip. I could tell you the exact borders of Israel right now.
So the West Bank is
the West Bank would be a military occupation that they would not have borders into.
Wait,
that wouldn't be part of the Israel proper borders. I gave you the exact borders actually.
So it's not. So the West Bank is not within Israel proper, within like the sovereignty of Israel.
No, it's a military occupation that has enclaves.
So Israel doesn't have. So let me make it easy for you. Israel has never announced their borders. Okay, so you can try to think of borders, but they've actually never established their borders.
They've announced what areas are annexed, which would be their borders.
Of the disputed territories. That's why they don't announce their borders formally on the Jordan side, because of these disputed territories that they want to eventually take all for themselves. This is becoming like super irrelevant and going into like the weeds.
No, you just said like a bunch of BS, and now you're like trying to backtrack by saying it's irrelevant.
No, I'm not. You said
it is irrelevant.
Israel established you said Israel established their borders. I'm telling you they have not, because you can't show me on a map where Israel's sovereignty is. You're saying a military occupation. Does that occupation become a part of Israel? Is the land that they're occupying a part of Israel? And if it's not a part of Israel, does that mean that there's an apartheid there? Does people have different rights?
Well, that would be the opposite. You mean if it was a part of Israel, then would it be apartheid? That's what you were trying. The argument you were trying to make.
I'm saying if it's a part of Israel, would you consider that an apartheid? And if it's not a part of Israel, then where are the borders?
Then, okay, the borders would be the Israel proper borders and East Jerusalem, which some would try to dispute, but would be annexed territory, and the Golan Heights, which would also be annexed territory.
You're saying
Those
you're
would be
saying
the exact borders.
So you're saying Israel's borders is basically Israel proper, with the Golan Heights and East Jerusalem. That's Israel's borders, right?
And then there would be a military occupation over the West Bank. I don't know why that's so hard to understand.
Okay, so but you no, because you're saying that Israel's borders is basically the 67 lines, including East Jerusalem and Golan Heights. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, that is
You
the
know,
border.
you realize Israel doesn't recognize that as their borders. Maybe you recognize that as their borders, but Israel doesn't recognize that as their borders because their citizens are living outside of their borders.
Yeah, they live under a military occupation area, and then Israel would like to try to make negotiations in order to keep those territories that they have civilians living in as much as they can get.
Yeah, but you understand that Israel doesn't recognize that as their borders, as you're describing. Like that's not Israel's stance on it.
You're talking about like the Likud party that they don't see that? Sure.
Okay. Just saying, like they're the ones that run the country, but
they haven't formally annexed it.
Hold on. What are we arguing about?
also
I don't know.
borders.
He was talking about like the apartheid and how like
Wait. What is like the macro? What is the point we're on right now?
I asked him about Israel's.
We're talking about the
borders,
war.
and he was telling me where the borders are. Yeah, we're talking about Israel and Palestine.
Well,
Yeah. No. The macro argument, we were talking about the war and whether or not the idea of the war was a good idea and whether it would accomplish anything.
wait, which
whether-
war? Which one? The October 7th war?
Yeah, the
Oh.
war after October 7th.
Okay.
So he was telling me how there was. I lost track of what he was the point he was trying to make. He was telling me that there was apartheid and that there was the settlement, so that even when Hamas is gone, they're still going to do more terror attacks. And then what was the macro point you were trying to make about that?
I think I was saying that if Hamas
It's
gets
useless?
defeated, that there's going to be other. Wait, do you hear me? Am I on mute?
Yeah.
Yeah, we hear you. Okay, wrap this one up. I don't even know what the you guys are arguing about now. Go. 1 minute.
No, I'm just saying if Hamas gets overrun, other militant groups will take their place. That's my argument.
Okay.
Oh,
my
wait,
final
do we
argument
disagree with
is
that?
I do disagree with that. My final argument is that Israel is going to completely wipe out all of Hamas and the PIJ and any other terror organization in the Gaza Strip. They're going to shortly have a temporary military occupation over the Gaza Strip and then transfer that occupation, because it is completely unpopular with the Israeli state. They're going to eventually
Yeah,
transfer
hold on.
that
Yeah, wait. Okay,
occupation.
if they wipe out Hamas and everything, that would be good, probably, right? But significant other conditions are going to have to change on the ground. Otherwise, the same shit will come back, probably, right? You don't think that just...
agree.
Yeah, right? Okay, then we agree, right?
I agree that they should work towards making the West Bank a state first and then work towards making the Gaza Strip. I'm more of a three-state kind of guy.
Okay, that'll never happen, but... okay, we don't have to argue about that.
It's like the carrot and the stick. You destroy Hamas, and then you work towards making the West Bank a state. To show if you do negotiations, you get rewards. If you try to kill Israelis,
Yeah,
you
but
don't get
why
rewards.
would you ever negotiate a state with not even all your territory? Now you've weakened your position and you've weakened the Gazan people's position as well. Like, why would you continue to isolate and
You can make it something like the Oslo Accords, where it's like a promise to work towards the next step.
why would you
And,
make
then
it something like something that failed horribly?
Good point, but I think that the West Bank might take what they can get after seeing Hamas's complete defeat.
Okay, maybe. All right. Okay.
We'll see. Okay, that's all I have.
Okay, be
Peace.
careful. Bye. Okay, Axel. Okay. Well, okay. We were running down statements that we believed in. Okay. We have to settle on this statement too. So we've said Zionists have every right to approach the British government and advocate for a space for their people and pursue that in whatever legal manner possible, period. This would include, though, like places in Palestine or other colonies or territories or anything right like that, right? Like, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, they have the right to try. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, here we go. In 1947, the Arabs had a right to revolt and try to fight off we'll say in 1947 to 1949, because I think it was 49 is when the Civil War is considered to have concluded. But we'll say from 47 to 49, the Arabs had a right to revolt. No, actually, I won't put revolt.
I would say they had a right before 1947, but I guess you're just talking about this time frame.
Yeah, we're just looking at the big wars, okay? In 47 to 49, the Arabs had a right to fight, to try and expel the newly arrived European Jews from Palestine. Do we agree with that? They had a right to try and fight and expel them?
Yes, but can we add one sentence? And that right is not genocidal. Because when you say expel, it's not to massacre.
Sure, ethnically cleanse, we could say, I guess.
Okay, because
I'll just put expel is fine, yeah.
Multiple times.
Yeah.
Times they tried to genocide them.
Well, I mean, they would have, obviously, but I won't even go that far.
Wait, you just hold on. You just said that they would. Okay, anyway, we need to agree on this. Okay, so yeah, they had the right to
try and fight and expel. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. In 1947 to 1949, the Jews had a right to defend their territory and new state. Do you agree with that or no?
I mean, okay. Let me think about this. Defend their territory and new state? Yeah, I would say yeah.
Okay.
Because I mean, if someone's going to try to kill you, you're going to try to. Yeah. Okay.
Sure.
Feels common sense.
Okay. So, I think that. I think that actually we only need these 4 statements. Okay, these 4 statements are capable of generating all of the conflict for the next 30, 40 years, where all the sides feel like they have proper justifications.
Wait, hold on.
Sorry, go ahead.
But in point 4, they don't have the right to expel the Palestinians. That's the difference. I think that's a differentiation that would make between 3 and 4. They don't have the right to expel those people that aren't fighting them, the civilians, to round them up and kick them out. Because those people have been there. You could disagree with me on that.
Okay, so we'll say Israel and Jordan did not have the right to expel citizens after the 1948 war. I guess we can say that.
Yeah, nor did any Arab country expelling Jews. Like, no one had the right to expel anybody, is my opinion.
Sure.
That wasn't taking part in like an army or military or whatever.
Sure, that's fine. Okay. Okay, I feel like from here we can start to justify a ton of like perpetual conflict, no? If the Jews feel like they have a right to defend their land, if the Arabs feel like they have a right to defend their land, if the British overpromised and fucked up and misled multiple people into thinking they could have the same shit, that basically all the sides here feel like they can fight for quite a while and feel some level of justification. I think we agree with that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right, we've got this. Okay. All right. They're just like central points that we agree on. Okay. From this point, where do we go? Yeah.
I think again. So my argument is 67 and 73 were not genocidal wars. Do you believe that 67 and 73 were intent on genocide, either side?
Well, on the Jewish side, it seems to be the case that the answer is obviously not. On the Arab side, I'm not as sure. I don't know.
Okay, so you believe if the Egyptians and Syrians had won in 73, they would have genocided the Jews?
In 73, probably. In 67, maybe. I'm not entirely sure.
Okay, so then
yeah.
There's no way to really know. Would you agree with that statement? Like, it's like impossible to make a
Yeah, but
conclusion
impossible
either way.
to know. I don't know if I jump out the second story if I'll die. I don't know if I jump out the third story if I'll die. I don't know if I jump out the fourth story I'll die. But like all of these things are probabilistic, right? I've got a higher chance of surviving a jump out of the second story of a building than an eighth story. I don't know if I'll die if I jump out the eighth story and land in a tree. But like just like I say, I don't know if I'll live or die, doesn't mean I can't assign probabilities. I would say the probability of some sort of genocidal action occurring after winning the war is it's over like 25%, I would say. Maybe over 50%. It depends on the statements I go and look up from different leaders at the time. But
okay, so subjective, completely subjective. Okay.
Wait, what do you mean by completely subjective?
it's your opinion, right? Your percentage is going to be different than my percentage.
Well, sure, but my opinion is going to be
different than
based on
somebody else's
statements by Arab leaders and everything, especially Nasser, who's leading a lot of
percentage.
this.
Okay, yeah. Okay. Again, I think statements by leaders leading to a conclusion of complete genocide isn't like it's not a one-to-one. Like you can't.
Yeah, that's why I
just
said I'm
say
not 100% sure, but I feel like pretty confident that it would have been some crazy genocide.
Pretty confident means over 50%. You're over 50% sure that there would have been a genocide if the Arabs won the war in '67.
I said over 25%. Maybe I shouldn't say pretty confident. I'm like, I feel
Let's
like
say
there's
over 25.
Yeah, I'll say over 25%.
Okay, I think we're going to disagree on the percentage, and this can be our first disagreement, but I don't think it's that big of a deal. But if you believe that it's 25%, you can't make the statement that the Arabs waged 3 genocidal wars against Israel. Because the first one you admitted was not a genocidal war, right?
Sure. Okay. We can say not a genocidal war, but we can say that in all of these wars, you and I agree that it would involve the complete dissolution of the state of Israel, and that Jewish people.
I will agree with that.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't say it's a genocidal war, and I wouldn't even say that they would have been all of the Jews would have been expelled in '73. I don't think that would have happened, or '67. I think in '48 it would have happened, not '67 or '73.
Sure, they might not have expelled them all, but they will divvy them up or move them or disenfranchise them in rights in ways that ensure a big Arab demographic majority, right?
They would ensure a big Arab majority. Yeah, maybe.
Like, you're never going to have a state like 45% Jews where they represent like 45% of your governing body with like an Arab leadership.
Well, I don't know. Like, I mean, I'd have to look at like how the Christians are living right now in Jordan and in Lebanon to have some kind of comparable example. Okay, and I don't know the current laws, if there's any current laws against Christians allowed to hold certain positions in certain government positions. I don't think there are any laws against that, so that's the conclusion I would make. I would make they would probably be treated how Christians are treated in Jordan and Lebanon.
Yeah, but I don't know if there are a lot of Christians in Jordan and Lebanon. Well, Lebanon is its own special thing because that was supposed to be a...
No, there is. I think it's like 5-6% in Jordan. Or something
well,
like
I'm
that.
sorry. When I say I don't know how many are in there, what I mean is that like it's clearly never going to be a threat to the Arab majorities there, right? Like, so yeah, maybe they have like...
I don't think it would matter. I don't think it would matter if it was a majority. Like, I don't think Arab states are known for their democracy anyway, right?
Yeah, but I'm just saying that like they're not. If it was 55% Christians living in Jordan, we might see a way different treatment of Christians than if it was 5% Christians. I'm saying that the policy might actually change at that point, right?
Yeah, maybe, but that's like, again, I feel like kind of speculative. Like in Jordan, it's a monarch, so I don't think however many Christians there are, they'll ever be able to make decisions in the government because there's a king and he's gonna make the final.
Hold on,
decision.
am I fucking insane? I thought the Hashemite kingdom, I thought they had a sort of parliament with representation.
No, they do, but I'm saying that I feel like the king is always going to have the final word.
Well, sure, but I mean, like, still, I mean, you've got people
so it
in...
just, like, overwrites the entire, like, purpose of...
Well, yeah, but at some point, if your parliament becomes dysfunctional, people are going to revolt or have issues, right?
Yeah,
like one of the big buy-ins
true,
when
I
Jordan
agree.
annexed the West Bank was they expanded their parliament dramatically to incorporate all of the new people that they just made Jordanians after that annexation because they need. So I guess
I don't think the king is just going to overwrite anything and everything. But sure. So your argument is if the majority, like the Arabs would have made sure the majority is Arabs if they won those wars.
Yeah, for
right?
sure. So that might involve mass
let's
deportation, mass
agree.
genocide, mass deporting, or not deporting.
Okay, not mass genocide. I can see.
Wait, why not genocide? Why is that so out of pocket? Arabs would never genocide Jews. Is that really something that you hang your hat on, or?
Yeah, it is. It is. I don't think if the war is over, it would, tally up a bunch of Jewish civilians and just start massacring them for demographic purposes. No way. I don't believe that.
I mean, the Turkish people did to the Armenians in 1910s or whatever. They, I mean, it's happened historically in the region. If I go back like over 1,000 years,
Arabs, but historically Arabs, like I don't know of any policies that Arab governments have put down to massacre or kill not just Jews but like anybody. Like maybe if we go back far enough, we'll find some shit. But I think there's like specific.
I mean, as the Ottoman Empire was collapsing, there were genocides happening, for sure. but I know that
Talk about an established government.
I don't think I would hang my hat on the idea that, like, no way with the Arabs that had just conquered this blossoming Israeli Jewish state, not massacre. Like, there'd already been massacres going on. We're talking about a full-blown genocide. I'm going to stick with that 25%. I'm going to stick with that 25% figure, okay? That's my... I'm going to stick with that. I think there's a 25% chance it would have been a big Armenian 2.0, yeah.
No, I'm saying there wouldn't be genocide with the purpose of demographics. Like, okay, the war is over.
Of course it'd be the purpose of demographics, of course. What else would it possibly be?
I disagree. Like, if you tell me that a bunch of civilians died during the course of the war, that's different. But if you tell me that, or if you tell me, even if you said like they're gonna have a bunch of people that are living there, Jews go back to Morocco, go back to Yemen, I'll be like, okay, yeah, I can see that for demographic purposes. To like just corral all of them up and start killing them, I don't think that's gonna happen. But purely speculative and subjective.
I hate doing singular quotes, and I tend to prefer to see actions and everything afterwards. So let me caution you that this is a singular quote, but it's one that we came across in our research.
You're going to make me defend a quote?
No, you don't have to defend a quote. I'm just saying that, like, these are things that I would kind of look at, right? So the Azam Pasha quotation was part of a statement made by Abdul Rasham Hassan Azam, the Secretary General of the Arab League from 1945 to 1952, in which he declared in 47 that were a war to take place with the proposed establishment of a Jewish state, it would lead to a war of extermination and momentous massacre, which will be spoken of like the Mongolian massacre and the Crusades. This quote was cited for decades. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, was this quote made in attempt to sway people from voting for a partition?
No, this was from 45 to 52. My understanding is that, and then Nasser, I think, has general quotes as well, where it's like, we will destroy every Israeli behind every tree. Like, people were really mad, understandably, that Jewish people were migrated to this area. They were super pissed.
Okay, then in that case, would you call some of the stuff that Israeli leadership currently saying and the results we're seeing, right, all the genocidal statements being said, and we can just chalk that up to like, oh, that's just bad press, whatever. But is that, like, does that mean what's happening in Gaza is a genocide?
I mean, like I said, I would have to go and I would have to look at like the actions following.
Well, I can
right?
tell you the actions following. Well, the results following is the deaths of 1% of the population has been exterminated in Gaza in the past 2 months.
Yeah, but it's clearly not a genocide, right? If I look at the results, right? That's why I'm saying for this Arab stuff, it's hard for me to say. That's why I said only 25%. I don't know, because they didn't win the wars, right? I don't know what happened.
Okay, let's pretend that Israel was trying to do, hypothetically, that they were trying to commit genocide in Gaza, okay? And they wanted to do it in a way where they still got American support and they weren't being ousted for it, okay? How would we prove that? Would it be based off of the things that they tell us? You know, oh, we're heading military targets. We just blindly trust them, if assuming they were really trying to commit a genocide.
No, I think you'd have to investigate like the attacks. Remember, genocide is an intentional thing. It's not like by accident.
No, I agree.
But I mean, there are actions that we could look at to figure out like what's going on. You know, like. Yeah, like let's say that 24-hour deadline had been real, and right after 24 hours, there's like a mass fucking carpet bombing of like some of these cities in Gaza, and it's like overnight there's like 50,000 people dead, and it's like, bro, this is like Hiroshima. What the fuck? That would be a thing.
Okay. What if Israel was purposely stopping UN and human rights organizations from entering to investigate any of this after the war? Would you say, okay, this is a little fishy?
Blocking third-party investigations. I mean, I would say that that's probably not necessarily a good thing, but that doesn't get you any closer to genocide. That just makes it look like a country doesn't want a particular thing to be investigated.
No, we're saying, assuming that it's a genocide, we're trying to figure out how would we get the facts on the ground. We can't just believe everything that the genocidal government is saying. Assuming they were a genocidal government, we could say, okay, Prime Minister said that they are waging a war against Amalek, right? I believe that's what he said in Amalek. I guess.
This is like the issue that I have with the standard that you're setting for me.
Dumb. I'm just
saying this is the issue I have with the standard you're setting for me.
Quote.
None of the genocides that I'm aware of, we don't have to do like a lot of digging on most genocides. Like it's not like, oh my god, this is actually genocide. Like it's usually pretty fucking obvious. Like it's blatantly obvious, and it's not blatantly obvious in like 5,000 people or 20,000 people of like 2 million are get bombed in a conflict. It's usually unbelievably obvious. Nobody's saying like, well, did they really want to have all those Armenians die when they were marching, or like, were they really trying to kill all the Jews as they were exterminating them in the death camps, or like in Darfur, or like usually the statements are abundantly clear, abundantly obvious, and like the militaries are moving in one purpose to like do a particular thing, right?
Okay, I have a question for you then.
Yeah.
Let's say there was a city or a town in Gaza, had a small town, let's say there was like 300 people, and Israel hypothetically was genocidal and said, okay, we can at least get away from just blowing them all to smithereens and saying it was a military target. How can we prove or disprove that?
How could you prove or disprove it? You'd probably need evidence from inside Israelis, the Israeli military command, right? I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, but but if they were hypothetically a genocidal government, are they going to give you any information that would point you to that?
They're not going to give it themselves. No, of course not. Yeah.
You would need third parties to go in and do investigations. That's my point.
Sure, but keep in mind as well. Also, hold on, real quick. Blowing up a town is not genocide. Genocide is the intent of eliminating an entire group of people. So even if like, I'm sorry, hold on, because it sounds like I'm being hypocritical, but we're running into these things again, or it sounds like I'm giving you an impossible standard of evidence. Here's what I'm telling you. If it leaked from Israel that they said, here's a town, it's got 300 people, no military objectives there whatsoever. We're gonna bomb this because fuck these Palestinian motherfuckers, we just wanna kill 300 civilians. And they bombed it, I think that would be a war crime, I think it would be despicable, I think there'd be also, but that's not genocide. It's not genocidal even. It's not genocide. Genocide is like the intention of bringing about the wholesale destruction of a group of people through some means, right?
Yeah, I mean, my purpose for I wasn't saying it was genocidal what's happening right now. My purpose of saying that is like if we just take quotes and we can extrapolate from the things that the Israeli leadership has been saying that they wanted to commit genocide.
Sure, but the reason why, and listen, you can tell me if you feel like these arguments are unfair if I'm weighing it differently. I feel like the quotes from the Israeli leaders, I think I can be more critical of because Israel's won the conflicts, right? Right now, if Israel wanted to enact a genocide, they could. We all agree that. Nothing would be stopping them militarily if they wanted to. From the Arab states, when I look at the quotes and then I look at the conflict, it's harder because they lost those wars. I don't know if they would have done a genocide or not, but it's not easy for just like, I don't think they would have because in areas where they could have, I'm not sure, right? That's why it's like the whole quote of like if Israel stops or if the Palestinians stop fighting, there's peace. If Israel stops fighting, there's genocide. Blah blah blah, whatever, right? But like that's the thing. So it's harder for me. If Israel's an occupying power, if they wanted to genocide everybody, they could. They have the ability to do so. The Arab states didn't have the ability to do so. If they did, I'm not sure what they would have done.
You say they have the ability to do so, but okay, let's say they wanted to, but at the same time didn't want to lose any of their allies throughout the world. Then they would have to do it in a way that's not murdering 5 million people, right? Or 2 million people, whatever.
Sure.
But
generally, when you're genocidal, you're not worried about what your international allies think about you.
Well, of course you are, especially if they're the ones that are giving you the weapons to commit what you're doing.
I don't.
You do care.
I don't think you do care.
You're standing in the world, right? Because if you were truly genocidal, like we agree that Israel has the capability of genociding, right?
If you're truly genocidal, I don't think you care about it's hard for me to accept that there's a nation that's genocidal, but they're also trying to win like public support internationally. I don't think that generally happens.
Not win public support, not get nuked. Because if let's say if Israel has the capability and they wanted to genocide the Palestinians, they wouldn't. Why? Because it will probably result in some fucking serious shit and some wars and them having to deal with other things. So I think we're getting caught up in Gaza, but there's a lot of other things we need to talk about. Gaza. Yeah, so I wouldn't say it's a genocide what's happening right now. I'm just saying that genocidal statements have been made by Israel, and it would be hard to prove with 100% certainty that everything the Israeli military has told us is facts.
Oh, okay. Yeah, but again, I just
are genocidal.
I don't think there's enough there for the genocide thing. Like war crimes and other bad acts, whatever. Sure, but genocide is like was a pretty specific thing.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, I forgot what led to this.
Lycan was saying, Destiny, isn't the argument tankies make against the Holodomor that millions died, but that wasn't their intention? Correct, Lycan. And that is like the number one argument. That would be the disputed fact over whether the Holodomor was a genocide or not. For instance, one could argue, and I think this is debated among historians. I don't think this is a settled question. I don't know if it'll ever be settled. But people will say the Holodomor was not a genocide. It was just a really, really, really fucking bad famine. And people died, and that's unfortunate. And it sucks, and it's horrible, and it was disgusting, and blah, blah, blah. But was it a genocide? No. It's not like they made this famine just to kill Ukrainian people, right? But then on the other side, people will On the other side, people will say, well, hold on, okay, maybe it wasn't a planned famine, but crops were specifically taken from Ukrainians. Soldiers were specifically stationed outside of villages to kill people trying to flee that were starving to death. And once a whole bunch of Ukrainians died from starvation, they shipped in a whole bunch of fucking Russians and shit to live in this territory to get them stronger claims to it. Like, was there some intentionality there of who was starved for what particular reasons, right? The active intention goes back. That's the entire thing that people argue about, was like, was it an intentional, maybe not an intentional famine, but did they co-opt that situation to intentionally bring about the destruction of a lot of Ukrainian, and nobody talks about them, but Kazakhstani people? And that is the argument. It comes down to the intention, because that's what genocide is. It's like an intentional thing. Yeah.
Wait, I have a question, Destiny.
Yeah, go for it.
Somebody made a good point. Just DM me, if the Arabs, this is not my idea, but if the Arabs wanted to genocide the Jews back in 1945 to 1952, wouldn't they have done that instead of allowing them to go back to Israel?
When?
Wouldn't they have just like massacred all of them post 48 war?
Well, my understanding is that there was like a mini Nakba that happened after.
But did they? We're still talking genocidal, right? We're not talking about ethnic cleansing.
Sure.
Couldn't they have completely massacred them? Are you saying they didn't have the means to?
I don't know if they had the means to, no. But I know that all the Jews fled like East Jerusalem. I don't know if Jordan could have genocide. Also, I don't know if you would want to genocide people right after doing armistice lines, right? Because now, like, because
yeah. Wait, I agree. But you're saying, but when we talk about a war of extermination, as read here from 1945 to 1952, that insinuates that Arabs were genocidal, and if they could have genocided between 48 and 52, they probably would have.
48 and 52. Wait, where would they have genocided Jews at? I mean, like, Jews were getting attacked and pogrom literally all over the Arab world. I mean, does that point to that? I mean, like, where would they have genocided them at? What are you talking about?
The ones living in their countries, the 800,000 or so that were living in Arab countries, didn't get genocided.
Well, but they started to get attacked. A genocide? A genocide, no.
Yeah.
A genocide,
so
no.
That's enough to say that the Arabs wouldn't have genocided the Jews, in my opinion.
Well, hold on. They might have genocide. Hold on. I think we could surmise, or not surmise, I'm sorry. We might be able to argue that if they would have won any of the major wars, they could have genocided the Jews in Israel. That doesn't necessarily mean they would have genocided the Jews in their own borders, though, right?
Well, I mean, this is the head of the Arab League, right? And I don't know, it sounds like the war of extermination was going to be against
the Jewish state of Israel. Not Jews, the Jewish state of Israel. That was what was triggering everybody.
Okay. So you're saying he only wanted to genocide the people within the state of Israel. He didn't
to expel them all, probably, yeah.
Genocide. So it wasn't okay. So he didn't want to genocide Jews. He just wanted to genocide Jews in the state of Israel.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, I disagree. I think the fact that they didn't genocide the Jews that were in the Arab countries between 48 and 51.
Well, you keep saying they didn't genocide them, but like they were doing pogroms and there was a ton of violence, and there's a reason why Jews fled from those countries. Like every time there was a major, yeah.
So did the Jews genocide the Palestinians in 48? Or were they just doing a bunch of pogroms and expulsions?
Did they
difference? Like terminology is different, right? Genocide, you said, is wipe out everybody. You said the Jews had the
Hold on. I'm not saying. Hold on. Wait. I'm not saying that the Arab states genocided the Jews in their country, or in their countries. I'm just saying that there was a lot of violence against them at that time. Right? We would call it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the fact that there wasn't a genocide, my argument is that this quote that you're showing me is as relevant as Benjamin Netanyahu's quote on like his genocidal statements. It's that. It's as relevant as that. Like, it's all, like, puffing out of the chest.
Sure, maybe. It's possible. Like I said, I don't really like quote farming, and most of the other quotes I see talks about the destruction of Israel, not necessarily genocidal quotes, even from Nasser. So maybe they wouldn't have, but it's hard to say because they never won any of the wars, so it's hard to say, I think. But
can you give me, like, a couple of minutes?
Sure.
Yeah.
I can talk about some computer shit. Okay.
Right.
Be careful.
Yeah.